Gator was born July 19, 1998. I adopted her 6 weeks later from Bird World in Bountiful, Utah. She was unusual from the beginning. To start with, she was a lemon beagle. Typically, beagles are tricolored with brown, black, and white markings. Gator didn't have any black markings. She was tan and white with a liver-colored nose and light-colored eyes, not the typical brown eyes or black nose. Little did I know that I would later refer to her as my golden beagle. When I took her over to meet Grandma, Grandpa, Uncle Tom, and Aunt Tugboat, she was a bundle of energy. She looked like a small tugboat. Tugboat was a lemon-colored basset hound. My mom took the tiny little Gator downstairs to my brother's room, where he was fast asleep. Waking him up, she said, "Look, Tom, Tugboat had a puppy." Groggy and a bit disoriented, Tom actually believed my mom for a second or two at least. About a week after adopting Gator, my husband decided that Gator needed a sister. Searching the classifieds, he found a Jack Russell Terrier that was 8 weeks old. So the three of us, yes, Gator too, piled into my Ranger and traveled to Salina, Utah to adopt Bandit. Gator and Bandit were inseparable from each other and from us. We took them everywhere. They came to work with us, went camping, fishing, rode on our ATVs. Bandit would often run behind Scott, while Gator preferred to be zipped up in my jacket with her head sticking out next to mine. We took them to the store and family outings. They were a part of our family. Bandit potty trained fairly quickly, but Gator seemed to have difficulties. One day I came home to find Gator in her kennel and Scott without a shirt. Apparently, Gator had fallen asleep on Scott and had peed all over him while she was sleeping. Although I was secretly chuckling on the inside, I knew that this was an issue. This was the beginning of the Golden Beagle. At 6 months old, I took her back to the vet to see if she had some sort of bladder infection. After x-rays, blood work, and a urine analysis, the vet told me she had a degenerative kidney disorder and suggested I put her down. Put her down where? I wasn't even holding her. Jerk. After some further questions, the long-term prognosis was that she would be prone to infections and illness and would not live as long of a lifespan as she should, and have costly vet bills. I left in despair. With Gator gently cradled in my arms, I would never speak of his findings again. She was treated with antibiotics for her infection and seemed to recover perfectly fine. Gator and I had a strong bond with each other. She was definitely a mommy's puppy. At one point during a checkup, my husband asked the vet about her howling and barking every time I left the apartment. After some questions, the vet diagnosed her with separation anxiety disorder and suggested puppy Prozac. I knew Gator missed me when I left, but I had no idea it was that bad. She hated being left alone with Scott. Eventually I figured out what a creep he was, and we divorced, and Gator was right all along. For the next couple of years, Gator spent too much time at the vet. Too much time and too much money. On 2 different occasions, she ran up bills that neared $1,000. The vet could not figure out what was wrong with her, but after a couple of days, she was pulling her IV out and barking constantly. According to one of the vet techs, she pulled her IV out 23 times in one 2-day period. That was when I decided to change vets. Aside from a 2-week period of vet visits every other day for an infection in her neck, she was fairly healthy from then on out. Thank goodness. In the first couple of years of her life, she had cost me a few $1,000s. Golden Beagle. If the vet bills were the only unusual expense, that would have been one thing. But Gator was not only a bird dog, but also a jailbird. More times than I care to remember, she would escape the fenced-in yard to sneak over to the nearby golf course. She loved that area. It was full of ducks and duck poop. Boy, did she love the duck poop. My white and tan beagle would often arrive home after a leisurely outing, reeking of poo and sporting a new golden green smear. Disgusting. If she didn't make it back within a couple of hours, I knew the expensive call from animal control was inevitable. I finally got my revenge. After receiving a call from the city, I went to retrieve Gator, except I made her suffer. I drove by the pound really slowly, calling her name. Gator! Gator! I could hear her howling a few blocks away. I returned about an hour later, only to hear her still howling away. That was the last time she was picked up by the pound. She didn't go out as much, and when she did, I think she hid in the bushes better. Gator helped to raise Riley and Brittany. She was there when we brought both of them home. She was always gentle, and she never growled or snapped at either child, even when they poked, hit, or fell on her. I couldn't have asked for a better dog. She was there for me through thick and thin and supported me through my divorce. That may sound strange, but as a friend once put it, she has people eyes. I took this to mean that she seems to really understand human emotions. Not only did she help raise Riley and Brittany, she helped to raise several other dogs. Bandit was her sister. After Bandit died came Blue. Blue was here temporarily and needed a bigger yard to go to. After Blue was Pork Chop. After Pork Chop came Hoover. Hoover was a tough adjustment for Gator, but eventually they became inseparable as well. There comes a time in every dog's life where the tail will no longer wag, the paws will be still, and the familiar bark will become an echo of the past. For Gator, this day began on a cold January evening in 2012 and would end 4 months later on a Thursday afternoon in late May. In January, my 2 children and I arrived home for the evening around 6:30 p.m. My daughter was alarmed when Gator started drooling and did not hold her head up high. In a panic, she called for my help. "Mom! Mom!" I wasn't too concerned until I saw her. I immediately knew we had a problem. I loaded the kids back into the car, and Ginger lifted my beagle into the passenger seat. Off we went to the vet. Once there, we waited apprehensively for the bad news. It was harder than I thought. Gator was in kidney failure. My heart sunk. I tried to remain strong, if not for my kids, for my own sake. If I broke down now, I would never be able to make it home. The vet informed me that she might not make it through the night. I asked if I could spend the night with her. They said that wouldn't be possible. I gave them my phone number and strict instructions that if she took a turn for the worse, they were to call me ASAP so I could be with her. The kids and I cried well into the wee hours of the night. I called to check on her early the next morning. She was stabilized, but still very sick. I was able to visit her that day, and she was happy to see me, but very weak. It broke my heart to leave her there another day. On day 3, she seemed to make some improvements, and we were able to take her out for a walk. Day 4, she was ready to go home. She jumped up on me and gave me lots of kisses. Her discharge from the hospital was costly, but a sweet day. In order for her to continue to have a fairly decent quality of life, I was required to give her 500 milliliters of saline solution each day. That's a half a bag of the saline solution. This was referred to as the poor man's dialysis for pets. This procedure was horrible, and I hated poking my dog every day. She was always good and knew when it was time, she would go sit in the bathroom without a fuss. I think she knew I hated it almost as much as she did. The hardest part of it was that I didn't know how much longer was too much. I wanted her to stay forever, and determining when it was time to let her go was very difficult. One day in May, I determined that enough was enough. The process of poking Gator daily had left enough scar tissue that I was hurting her more and more. At times, Gator would lose control of her bladder and have accidents. The heartbreaking part was that she would lay on top of her accidents, ashamed. May 24th was the day. We spent the morning together. She had lots of treats, people treats. I put her bed in the car and rode in the back seat with her. My dad drove, and we arrived in too short of time. I stayed in the car as he retrieved the vet. The vet was good and approached the car with grace and empathy. Gator passed with dignity and immediately appeared relaxed. Instantly, I could tell I had made the right choice. The choice to release her sweet soul from her tired old body. I cried all the way home, holding Gator and stroking her soft fur. After arriving home, we carefully transported her bed and lifeless body upstairs. I picked up my children from school, and we had a memorial service. My mom and brother arrived a short time later, and we had a viewing before the funeral. Like I said before, Gator was a part of our family. The burial plot was prepared, and at the request of my daughter, we had a moment of silence, and each of us said a few words. She was then wrapped in a blanket and placed into the ground in my side yard. She is the 3rd dog buried in my backyard, and I'm sure not the last. The Rainbow Bridge. By the edge of the woods, at the foot of a hill, is a lush green meadow where time stands still, where the friends of man and woman do run, where their time on earth is over and done. For here, between this world and the next, is a place where each beloved creature finds rest. On this golden land they wait and they play, till the rainbow bridge they cross over one day. No more do they suffer in pain or in sadness, for here they are whole, their lives filled with gladness. Their limbs are restored, their health renewed, their bodies have healed, with strength imbued. They romp through the grass without even a care, until one day they stop and sniff at the air. All ears perk forward, eyes dart front and back, then all of a sudden one breaks from the pack. For just at that instant their eyes have met, together again, both person and pet. So they run to each other, these friends from long past. The time of their parting is over at last. The sadness they felt while they were apart has turned into joy once more in each heart. They embrace with a love that will last forever, and then, side by side, they cross over together.